Starting off this countdown, we have Rye Playland. Located in Rye, New York, Playland, otherwise known as Rye Playland, was built in 1928 and has a variety of rides for everyone. But I should mention that these rides aren't the safest. Since 1938, a number of different accidents have occurred at the park. In 2004, a young guest was thrown from a ride and died. This ride is still in commission at the park. Then in 2005, another young guest was thrown from a different ride and died. In 2007, a park supervisor passed away on another ride. And back in 1998, a girl choked to death on chewing gum after it got lodged in her throat while on a ride. But it's not only the rides that are dangerous at this park. It's the food as well. A lot of people get sick off of the park's food. Health inspectors found that they had a problem with rats, chipping lead paint, and birds would defecate over the barbecue areas, meaning bird poop was getting mixed in with the food. No thank you. In our 9th spot, we have Schlitterbahn Park. What a name! Well, this park is famous for throwing people from raft rides in midair. You would think that they would get this issue fixed since it happened a bunch of times. But no. In 2016, a boy died after being launched from this ride. He flew off of the ride and hit a metal rod, which decapitated him. The ride is said to be the tallest in the world. Well, when you have people dying on it, maybe it shouldn't be the tallest in the world. It wasn't until 2 years later that the water slide was decommissioned. Coming in at number 8, we have Galaxyland Amusement Park. Opened in 1985, Galaxyland is a theme park located in West Edmonton Mall in Canada. Just saying, I don't trust rides inside of malls. Well, one of the rides in particular was quite dangerous. The Mind Bender. With a name like that, you know it's gonna be deadly. In 1986, one of the screws came out of the wheels in the last car on the train. The car disengaged from the track, flinging guests to the ground. The car then smashed into a concrete pillar. 3 people were killed and 19 were left injured. In our 7th spot, we have Discovery Cove. Located in Florida, Discovery Cove, owned by SeaWorld, allows guests to interact with a variety of marine life. These mammals are obviously held there against their will. As humans, we think we have control over them, but we don't. There are a bunch of examples as to why it's dangerous to interact with dolphins or whales or other wild mammals. But the park ignores these facts and continues to operate. I mean, at SeaWorld in 2010, a trainer was killed after one of the show whales grabbed her ponytail, pulled her into the pool, and swung her back and forth. It was horrific. A lot of people have posted about their concerns about going to Discovery Cove. They're afraid they will be the victim of a vicious attack. In January of 2009, a man died after cutting his toe on coral while swimming with the fish. He was hemophiliac and ended up suffering from septic shock and organ failure. He had to get his legs amputated below the knee to prevent infections, but he still sadly passed away. Then on August 16, 2011, 3 guests and 5 employees were injured after lightning struck inside the cove. On top of that, several park employees have sued the park for personal injuries. Coming in at number 6, we have Coney Island Park. The amount of deaths and injuries that have occurred at this park is insane. In 1991, a car flew off the ride, resulting in 1 death and 8 injuries. In 1996, the bolts on the Jumbo Jet ride became loose, and the car derailed from the track and crashed into a pole. In 2007, a restraining lap bar broke, causing a guest to fall out of her seat, knocking her unconscious. And now we have the Coney Island Cyclone, a very popular but deadly ride. In 1985, a man was killed on this ride after he stood up and his head hit a crossbeam. Okay, that was kind of his fault, I know, but still, it's scary. In 1988, a maintenance worker died after falling from this ride. In 2007, a man broke several vertebrae while riding the Cyclone. He died 4 days later. The list goes on and on, like it's quite scary. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Kings Island. Kings Island is known as the largest amusement park and water park in the Midwest. But of course, over the years they have had a number of scary incidents occur at the park. The scariest thing that happened occurred on June 11th, 1991. Just an hour after opening, a man fell into a pond, and 2 men died of electrical electrical shock while trying to save him. And they don't even know how this happened. Employees have entered the pond before to remove trash, and they've never been electrocuted. Then, just an hour later, a woman fell 60 feet to her death after her harness malfunctioned on the Flight Commander ride. Over the years, other ride malfunctions have caused a number of injuries all across the park. A lot of them seem to be freak accidents, but either way, the park now has a reputation of being haunted or cursed. In our fourth spot, we have River Country. I know I've talked about this abandoned Disney park before, but it was honestly so deadly, like I just have to mention it again. And it's surprising since it was owned by Disney, right? You think it's like a happy little place. So River Country Park opened in 1976. It was the first water park at Disney World. But over the years, a lot of tragedies occurred at the park, forcing them to close. In 1980, a boy was killed at the park after getting a bacterial infection from one of the pool's water. The bacteria attacked his brain and nervous system, which killed him. Then just 2 years later, another boy passed away at the park. He drowned after coming off one of the water slides. Then in 1989, another boy drowned there. Finally, the park closed in November of 2001. In our third spot, we have Walt Disney World. Yes, I know it's shocking that this one's on the list. Disney World is such a huge amusement park. One of, if not, the most famous park in the world. But a lot of accidents have occurred at the park. Most kept secret by the park so they don't ruin their reputation. Here are just some of the accidents that happened there. In 1979, a 31-year-old woman died riding Space Mountain. She was found unconscious in her seat, but staff ended up sending her on the ride again. A young guest drowned in Cinderella's castle moat, and then in 2003, a guest was killed on the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad ride after it derailed. 10 of the other passengers on the ride were injured. Then in 2004, a worker got run over by a float during the parade and died. We also have the man that fell to death on the Haunted Mansion ride. And one of the most famous deaths involved 18-year-old Debbie Stone. She was a hostess for the musical performance America Sings. But during one performance, she got caught between a rotating wall and was crushed to death. It's so sad that these happened at the happiest place on earth. Moving on at number 2, we have Six Flags. So there are Six Flags all over the states, and it's not just one park in particular that's dangerous. No, all of them are. Let's start with the fire in 1984. So in Six Flags, New Jersey, 8 people died inside of the haunted castle attraction after a fire broke out. Apparently, they were so badly burnt that they had to be identified by dental records. Then in 2008, a 17-year-old boy was decapitated by a ride while trying to get his lost hat. Then in 2007, on the Superman Tower of Power in Six Flags, Kentucky, a cable snapped and wrapped around a girl's neck and legs. She managed to get the cord off her neck, but the ride began to descend and it sliced both of her legs off. Surgeons were only able to reattach her right foot. And in our number 1 spot, we have Action Park. Located in Vernon, New Jersey, Action Park has been given a number of different names over the years, like Class Action Park, or Traction Park, or Accident Park. In fact, it holds the title of the most dangerous amusement park in the world. I don't even know where to begin. So for starters, this park opened in 1978 and had mainly water-based attractions. One major problem that they had was that their rides were not thoroughly tested. So elaborate rides were built, but the designers didn't really know if they were safe to use. For example, one of the rides, the Cannonball Loop, got tested with the dummy doll, and it came back with no head. But this didn't stop an employee from testing out the ride. Thankfully, he just ended up with a bloody nose and a bunch of bruises. Could have been worse. But the ride was open to the public anyway. Then we have the fact that most of the park employees were underage and undertrained. A number of rides were very unsafe, yet still in operation. Here are just some of the deaths that occurred at the park. A man was electrocuted while on a ride known as the Kayak Experience. One man had a heart attack when going off the Tarzan swing into the water, and 3 people drowned in the tide pool. Apparently, the waters in the tide pool were so strong that it was hard for even strong swimmers to stay afloat. As a result, the lifeguards rescued on average 30 people a day. This park was actually deadly, but managed to stay open until 1996, when it finally closed because the amount of injury lawsuits was just getting out of hand. Honestly, how many people never want to go to an amusement park ever again?
Coming in at number 10, we have They're in the House. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that would have me running out of someone's house faster than seeing that they have a bunch of animatronics tucked away in their home. Like, do you want to come over and play 2K and watch some new episodes of Love Island? Well, are those creepy robots gonna be staring at me like they're gonna harvest my soul, or did you get rid of them like a normal person? The YouTuber Connor Leszewski has a collection of these bad boys just laying around his place, and he gives the viewers a full tour of them in his place while the lights are off for an added creepy feel.
Okay, open the curtains. Okay, this is Rolf the Wolf saying thanks for using the show selector.
Oh great, they work too. You know you would be getting a good night's sleep when one of those things starts screaming at you in the middle of the night. If you have a house that looks like this, don't at me. Delete my number. Unfriend me. Because we're never hanging out because we have nothing in common. Coming in at number 9, we have sea monsters. Here's the thing about Disney rides. Not all of them are going to last forever. In fact, most of them will get shut down and then flipped into something else. Especially as Disney continues to buy up every IP in the world. Out with the old, in with the Star Wars. Can we take a breather for a moment and realize how crazy it is that Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars? Darth Vader can fight Iron Man on the big screen and it's completely legal. Well, one of the big Disney movies was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The ride for this movie kicked off back in the 1970s and people loved it. It would take you underwater and show you a bunch of cool robotic sea monsters and squid attacks pulled right out of the movie. Well, it turns out taking care of a ride that's underwater costs a lot of money, and the whole thing was eventually shut down. This led to all the pieces of the ride being removed, and now giant sea monster animatronics are just sitting somewhere wasting away covered in water damage. Coming in at number 8, we have Western Village Cowboys. Western Village was Japan's attempt at capturing the fun of American cowboy life in a theme park that was based on the rootin' tootin' lifestyle. I think they left out all the parts where people were killed and everyone was racist. I don't know if those things really sell tickets. Well, the dusty revolvers of the park actually brought in a ton of people until they didn't. Just like most theme parks, eventually it saw its last days, and the thing about theme parks is they are very expensive to clear out, so now just a ton of the junk that was used to make this place presentable is just sitting there like old garbage. One of the creepiest aspects of this park are the animatronic cowboys who have much of their clothes removed so you can see their dirty robot parts. Some of them have their rubber faces ripped off, which give them a great Terminator vibe. Coming in at number 7, we have Hot Mess. You can tell that our next animatronic has seen better days. It looks like how I feel after a night out when you get home and the sun's already coming up. You walk in the door and you sit on the couch rethinking your whole life because it feels like a dump truck was just ran through your soul. I don't have a backstory on this bad boy, so I'm just gonna make one up. This animatronic has some pom-poms and the worst pigtails I've ever seen before, so I'm assuming that this animatronic was some sort of cheerleader in its previous life. Then it looks like it was thrown into a landfill where everything that wasn't made of metal rotted away, except for the face for some strange reason. Now it stands in someone's garage for a reason I don't understand. I can only assume that someone was digging around the dump for something to cheer them up. Then they found this cheerleader animatronic that's probably activated every time they walk through the door. They come in and it's like, hey, I hope you had a good day. Coming in at number 6, we have Abraham Lincoln. We all know the famous statue of Abraham Lincoln which sits at the Washington Monument. It represents a moment in American history that should never be forgotten. Well, did you also know that there was an animatronic made for him and it will make a chill run up your spine because of what's left of it? Look at this thing. It doesn't bring any happy thoughts to your mind, that's for sure. All I can think about is destruction and mayhem. Although I would like to see this thing come to life because for some reason I think it would be funny watching Abe Lincoln beat the hell out of people. Coming in at number 5, we have The Inevitable Future. This one is probably the most famous picture of an abandoned animatronic I have ever seen because it got memed super hard. One of the best was Charles Entertainment Cheese has hit rock bottom. I'm sure you can understand why people meme this picture. It's absolutely perfect. But this picture was taken in some desert somewhere, and this for sure is the inevitable future for every Chuck E. Cheese on the planet. I'm pretty sure their financials weren't doing very well before the coronavirus kicked off, but now that everything is in full swing with a worldwide pandemic, the last place you're gonna catch people is at a rat arcade where the air is 50% child coughs and every inch of the place is covered in something sticky. That should be one of the games at Chuck E. Cheese. You should be able to walk around the place and touch random sticky spots, and if you can guess what it is, you get 20 tickets. Like, is it soda? Is it boogers? Is it dried vomit? Who knows? Coming at number 4, we have Billy Bob Brock Ale. I have no idea who this animatronic is, but apparently it was an animatronic from Showbiz Pizza in Florida. It should be no surprise that it's fallen apart. Just kidding, everyone likes to dog on Florida, but the leftover shell of this former band member is enough to make your dreams turn into a hellscape. Coming in at number 3, we have Gremlins. Gremlins Gremlins is one of the best horror movies of its day. If you go back and watch it now, it seems kind of cheesy, but I used to love this one as a kid. The movie is still referenced in pop culture to this day. In the movie, they have one very cute looking Furby-esque animatronic, and then there's a bunch of creepy ones that look like they're living in a demon's foot fungus. And if you wanted to see the inner workings of one of these bad boys, well, here you go. This is some of the coolest stuff to me. It's a hit of nostalgia combined with details of how movie magic works. One day we're gonna see one of these for Baby Yoda. Coming in at number 2, we have Old Man Terrifying. This next one looks like something that everyone sees when they have sleep paralysis late at night. One look into this thing's eyes and it should be no surprise that it came from an English theme park that is shut down now. Mind you, this thing was supposed to be a ghoul, so I think it was doing a pretty good job at being terrifying. But what I can't understand is how people running the park thought that they were going to get some business after people saw this thing. Sure, you come to visit and then you get a good fright, and it seems like all fun and games in the moment, but then the 6 months of night terrors you get after you get home will ensure you never venture back to this park again. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Jason Voorhees. I don't know how to feel about this. Half of me thinks this is so funny, like it is an amazing prank, and the other half of me thinks this is the most terrifying mean thing you could do to people. But let me give you a rundown on this one. First, I'm going to show you the picture. In the picture, you can see two people. One of them is of course Jason Voorhees, and the other is Curtis Lahr. Lahr built a life-size Jason animatronic and anchored it to the bottom of a lake. Now it's so far deep down that most people would never see it, which kind of makes the whole thing a cool art project. But I'm thinking about the one person who would take a deep plunge into this lake and then see this thing and then instantly have a panic attack. Or one day the thing gets dislodged from the bottom of the lake and then there's just a Jason bobbing around in the middle of the water. Yeah. No, thank you.
Coming in at number 10 is Yangon, Myanmar. This amusement park doesn't actually have a name or a name that I could find. It simply goes by the amusement park in Yangon, Myanmar. Now, it was opened by the Burmese dictatorship in the former capital of Yangon, Myanmar around 1997. Its claim to fame was that it had the first roller coaster in the whole country. Other rides included the rocket, a Viking pirate ship, the UFO cycle, a carousel, and bumper cars. Now, there was even an arcade called Happy Child World. This park closed suddenly in 2012 and nobody seems to know the real reason why. Yet it continues to steadily attract people who like exploring. The jungle has rapidly taken over the rusting attractions while packs of wild dogs live beneath some of the rides. Now, every so often you might hear the roar of a lion or a tiger from the nearby zoo, and it is possible to sit in some of the roller coaster cars or pretend to ride the horses on the carousel, although everything is now covered with a layer of mold and dirt. But I think twice before going here because locals say that the park is haunted with the ghosts of people who have died in accidents on the rides. Number 9. Taman Festival, Bali, Indonesia. Locals believe the abandoned theme park Taman Festival is home to lost spirits, making it a spooky ghost town. Originally to be built in 1997, Taman Festival was set on 8 hectares and had a 3D turbo theater. There were nightly laser shows, a man-made volcano, roller coaster, and other amusement park rides and animals. There were plans to feature Bali's largest swimming pool and an inverted roller coaster, but locals were always skeptical due to spirits. Urban legend was that someone died on a ride when the park first opened. In 1998, with many of the rides not completed, lightning struck, causing irreparable damage. Finally, in 2000, after a decline in visitor numbers, Taman closed due to lack of funds. Now today, there's nothing but lost memories and the evil spirits locals believe to have been taken over. Also, there's an alligator pit. Yes, the story goes that the park owners, unable to rehouse the crocs, left them to fend for themselves. Some claim that they have eaten humans who visit the park, so if you do visit, keep your ear out for the rustle in the undergrowth. It could just be a crocodile, and given the dense foliage, your fate might be an alligator's dinner. Number 8. Hoi Thu Tan Hue, Vietnam. Vietnam is home to a few abandoned amusement parks, and none of them are more eerie though than the iconic Hue Thoi Tan abandoned dragon water park. Located on the outskirts of Hue, Vietnam's old imperial capital, Hoi Thu Tan was built as an aquatic park and carnival complex in 2014. It only stayed open a few short years before it closed down, and the exact reasons for the closure remain unknown, but it was probably a financial decision on the part of the park's owners. The most iconic structure structure there, a 3-level aquarium in the shape of a dragon's head perched in the center of the main lake, has become a beacon for locals and tourists alike who love to take selfies on the bridge. Now, in its heyday, there were dozens of aquariums inside the dragon displaying fish, crocodiles, and other creatures. When the park closed, some of the crocodiles escaped into the lake and were eventually rehomed by PETA. Although the park is completely abandoned, there's still a chance you'll be charged a small entry fee to enter, depending on which guard is manning the front gate, so come prepared. Number 7. Mimaland, Malaysia. Malaysia in Miniature Land, aka Mimaland, was active from 1975 to 1994. Considered the first theme park in Southeast Asia, it featured an artificial lake, a huge swimming pool with giant water slides, and a prehistoric animal kingdom. Now, unfortunately, in January 1993, a 27-year-old died while using a giant water slide at the Mimaland pool. The incident shocked the public and resulted in a temporary closure of Mimaland. After improvement was done to the giant slide, Mimaland was reopened. However, a minor landslide caused damage to the walls of the same pool in May 1994. The incident caused muddy water to seep into the pool, causing the area to close to the public forever. Today, the park's life-size dinosaurs and megafauna, bumper cars, and other attractions have been eerily engulfed by the jungle. Number 6. Daddy Park, Antwerp, Belgium. Located in Antwerp, Belgium, Daddy Park aimed to provide experiences for families that were affordable and unforgettable. Originally built in 1950 as a playground for the children of the pilgrims visiting the nearby basilica, by 1980 the schoolyard equipment had been replaced with amusement rides and open to tourists and those in town on pilgrimage. For the time, the park enjoyed great success, entertaining 1 million visitors during its peak year, and for a time containing what was, at 800 meters, the longest monkey bridge in Europe. However, things took a turn for the worse as the increasingly run-down rides became more and more hazardous. Unfortunately for one young boy, his unforgettable experience involved him losing an arm while riding on the Nautic jet ride. Now, following fierce backlash from visitors, which included complaints about other safety concerns, the park closed down in 2002. Today, not much is left at the abandoned park other than the ruined equipment and the chilling atmosphere. Plans are reportedly underway to transform the park into a new recreation area, but I think they should just leave it. Number 5. Six Flags New Orleans, USA. Six Flags New Orleans first opened as Jazzland in the year 2000, and a leasing agreement was established with Six Flags in 2002 following the previous operator's bankruptcy proceedings. Six Flags invested $20 million in upgrades, and the park reopened as Six Flags New Orleans in 2003. Following the substantial damage caused by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, though, the park remained closed to the public in order to make efforts to repair and reopen it. However, in 2009, the city of New Orleans ended its 75-year lease with Six Flags, and the park consequently became permanently closed due to extreme damage that was too severe to be repaired. Six Flags salvaged several rides and relocated them to other parks. Following several failed proposals to redevelop the site, it seems abandoned and in poor condition. Videos and photos of the site have emerged over the years from thrill seekers and YouTubers, and as a result, city officials became more diligent in securing the park and banning tourists, tasking the New Orleans Police Department with patrolling the abandoned site and arresting trespassers. An option to demolish the clear land was explored in 2019 following complaints from local residents, estimated to cost the city $1.3 million. Now, in the meantime, the city continues to generate revenue from the property by occasionally leasing the park to various production companies as a filming location, as it has been used for films such as Jurassic World and Dawn of Planet of the Apes. Number 4. Nara Dreamland, Japan. Located on the northern outskirts of the historic Japanese city, Nara Dreamland was a knockoff of California's Disneyland. Back in the 1950s, a man named Kunzio Maso met with Walt Disney to create a plan to make a Disney-like park in Japan. The two never reached an agreement, so Masto went ahead with developing his own characters, bringing Nara Dreamland to life in 1961. It even had Disney-esque attractions like Sleeping Beauty Castle, Tomorrowland, and Adventure Jungle Cruise. Dreamland did quite well until Tokyo Disneyland opened in 1983, when attendance began to plunge. The park endured until 2006 and was a popular destination for urban explorers until it was demolished a decade or so later. Now, all that remains are the American-style chain restaurants like Coco's, Il Ben Italian Buffet that once served theme park visitors, and 2 sports stadiums that were built in the 1980s to complement Dreamland. Number 3. Pripyat Amusement Park, Chernobyl, Ukraine. The Pripyat Amusement Park is an abandoned amusement park located in Pripyat, Ukraine. It was to have its grand opening on May 1st, 1986, in time for the May Day celebrations, but these plans were cancelled on April 26 when the Chernobyl disaster occurred a few kilometers away. Several sources report that the park was open for a short time on April 27th to locals, but they were forced to evacuate as reports of dangerously high levels of radiation in the area started to emerge, something inhabitants and authorities had been unaware of on the day of the nuclear incident. Now, radiation levels around the park vary. The liquidators washed radiation into the soil after the helicopters carrying radioactive materials used the ground as a landing strip, so concreted areas are less radioactive. Now, today the park remains untouched and the unused rides are disintegrating or consumed with mold. Number 2. Spree Park, Berlin, Germany. Shut down in 2001, Berlin Spree Park opened in 1969 as East Germany's only amusement park and welcomed 1.5 million visitors a year in its heyday. When it closed due to falling visitor numbers, owner Norbert Witte packed up 6 of the park's most popular rides into shipping containers and had them sent to Peru, a new park in Lima that never quite took off. Now, Norbert's problems grew when some of the rides were shipped back to Germany and custom officers discovered 160 kilograms of a white powdery substance that was hidden in the mast of the flying carpet. Partly due to his criminal activities and partly to lackluster visitor numbers, Spree Park was shut down to the public in 2002, and Norbert was tried on smuggling charges 2 years later. As a result of this shutdown, the amusement park has slowly been taken over by nature. Now, unfortunately, a number of features were destroyed in a fire in 2014, which was caused by arson, following which security was strengthened with a new perimeter fence and permanent security personnel and dogs. And coming in at number 1 is Okpo Land, South Korea. Okpo Land was one of Asia's most famous amusement parks, but in May 1999, it closed overnight, becoming abandoned. The duck-themed ride, which was one of the main attractions in the park, is known to have caused at least one fatality in the early 1990s. A train derailed and fell onto the ground, ending the life of one person and injuring several others. The ride lived on and no compensation or apology was received, giving rise to rumors about owners paying off local officials. In 1999, the ride claimed its second life, and again one of the trains derailed and capsized, causing the death of a young girl. Following the accident, the park's owner vanished overnight and Okpo Land was closed immediately and indefinitely. Okpo Land remained abandoned following its closure, with the rides left in place. Now, hauntingly, the capsized duck train from which a rider plummeted to her death in 1999 remained hanging over the edge as it had done on the tragic day until the park began to be demolished in 2011.
We're going to jump right into our number 10, which is the Big Dipper. The Battersea Park was the most famous amusement park in the UK after it opened in 1951, and its most famous ride was the Big Dipper, a roller coaster that drew huge crowds. Everything went fine for the ride for almost 20 years until in 1972, a terrible accident occurred. One of the carriages detached on an incline and crashed off a bend. 2 teenage boys and an 8-year-old girl died at the scene, with 2 more children dying in hospital. It just goes to show that safety measures only work when they work all the time. As we move into our number 9, which is the water slide at Waterworld. A group of high school seniors were on an end of year school trip to Waterworld, California, when they decided to set a new school record for what they call clogging. Clogging involved getting as many people on the water slide at one time by each person stopping halfway down the slide, despite the rule of 1 person at a time. They got to 33 people on the slide at the same time before crack, the slide collapsed under their weight, killing one 17-year-old by crushing their chest. The remaining 32 students were brought to a hospital and 17 of them attended their graduation later that month in wheelchairs. They say that rules are meant to be broken, but sometimes rules are meant to stop you dying at amusement parks. Let's remember that, guys, as we jump into our number 8, which is Kings Island. Now, death struck this park not just once but twice in the same day on June the 9th, 1991. First, a man fell into a pond, and when his 2 friends tried to jump in and save him, they were electrocuted by a nearby cable and killed. Amazingly, the man they were trying to save was the only one that survived. As if that wasn't enough for Kings Island, later on in the day, 32-year-old Candy Taylor fell from the Flight Commander ride and died instantly. They say lightning never strikes twice, but I guess accidents at amusement parks can. As we move into our number 7, which is the Gulliver's World theme park. In 2002, 15-year-old Salma Salim was visiting the Gulliver's World theme park in Warrington, England, when her and her mother went on a Ferris wheel there. Salma had Down syndrome and became distressed when she was separated from her mother by the ride operators because they thought she was too big to ride with her. As the Ferris wheel began, Salma tried to reach her mother by wriggling out of the safety bar, but ended up slipping and falling off the Ferris wheel 20 feet up in the air. She later died in hospital. Now, neither Salma or her mother spoke English that well, and it appears that the language barrier between them and the ride operators were to blame for the tragedy that happened that day. So obviously communication and understanding can go a long way in preventing disasters at theme parks, but also not getting into a massive human-sized catapult. That can help, because that's our number 6. Now, trebuchets were medieval catapults used to chuck massive rocks at enemy fortifications and destroy them. Someone had the bright idea of using humans instead of rocks at the Middlemore Water Park in Somerset, England, to create the human trebuchet ride. And it's exactly what you'd expect, humans getting flung into safety nets. Except one time in November 2002, when a 19-year-old Oxford University student was flung 30 meters through the air by the catapult and missed the safety net. He later died of his injuries. Wow. So from medieval warfare to modern warfare, now we've got the tragic tale of a soldier at the Darien Lake theme park in at number 5. James Hackemer was an Iraq war veteran who lost both his legs to an IED attack. In 2011, he visited Darien Lake theme park in New York with his family. He was riding on the Ride of Steel roller coaster at 50 miles an hour when he was ejected from the ride. He came out of his seat restraints and fell 150 feet to the ground. James wasn't wearing his prosthetic legs at the time, and it is thought that the operators ignored the rules posted at the ride's entrance, which requires that riders have both legs. Now obviously sometimes it can be the actual ride operator's fault that someone dies, but sometimes it can be the actual rider themselves, just like our number 4 at the Loudon Castle theme park. 18-year-old Mark Blackwood was a ride operator at Loudon Castle theme park in Scotland who was operating the Rat roller coaster for the very first time that day. He had received training a few hours before on how to supervise the ride and was left to himself. During his first shift on the Rat, one of the roller coaster cars stopped on the track. Mark walked out to give it a push, but ended up moving with it. He clung to the side, but as the cart rounded a sharp corner, Mark was thrown off. He later died in hospital due to severe brain injuries. We've reached number 3 now, guys, and it's a tragic event that took part at Utah's Lagoon Amusement Park. In 1989, a 6-year-old boy called Ryan was riding on a children's roller coaster called Puff the Little Fire Dragon. It was a low-speed ride that did multiple rounds of the track. As it came to a stop, Ryan began to climb out, but the 18-year-old operator, who was on her first weekend on the job, asked them all if they wanted to go around again. Without hesitation, she started the ride again. Ryan attempted to get back in the car as it rose up the incline, but fell out of the back and slipped through the tracks. As Ryan tried to climb back up through the tracks, the ride came around again and struck him dead on in the head. He was killed instantly. It's especially tragic when these things happen to kids. But anyway, guys, let's move on to our number 2 now, which is the Space Journey ride in China. This ride at the Eco-Venture Valley of overseas Chinese town in Suzhou was designed to simulate the experience of a rocket launch by accelerating you and spinning you round and causing an extreme G-force effect on you. You spin around and around under a dome with a screen that stimulates a starry night sky. One day though, something went very wrong. The local government were accused of failing to explain what happened, but local media spoke to some eyewitnesses who said there was an explosion and one of the ride's carts broke off and fell to the ground. The cart hit the side of the dome the ride was in and smashed 12 meters to the floor with more than 40 people inside. 6 people were killed and 10 were injured. Alright guys, so we've covered accidents that happened on water slides, medieval catapults and even space rockets, but our number 1 was a ride that didn't even move at all. It's the Haunted Castle. The Haunted Castle was an attraction at Six Flags in Jackson Township, New Jersey, USA. One day on May the 11th, 1984, as guests were walking around and enjoying being frightened, the whole thing caught fire. It spread quickly and was not helped by the fact that the building had no sprinklers because it was classed as a temporary structure. Although most people managed to escape the blaze, 8 teenagers were trapped inside and burnt to death. It turned out the fire was caused after 2 teenagers used a lighter to light their way through the castle after one of the lights broke.
Alright, starting us off on this list, number 10, we have the Wicked Twister. This roller coaster is absolutely insane. So you start off going forward and it climbs up this very tall spiral, and then you do it all over again in reverse. You go backwards and you go super quick. Going backwards on roller coasters is always a scary time because you can't see what is going on and you're just not used to that way of moving. This roller coaster is 215 feet tall and goes 72 miles an hour, and it's located at Cedar Point. It's so crazy, but this ride opened up 2002, and in the second season for this roller coaster, support beams were needed to be added because there was a chance of the ride not being able to support himself. Luckily, the mistake has been spotted and the ride has been open ever since. Moving into number 9, we have the Steel Dragon 2000. This is one of the biggest roller coasters in the world, and it's also the longest riding coasters in the world. Just seeing from the pictures of this ride, it looks very intimidating. This roller coaster is not for the faint of heart. This roller coaster uses more steel than any other coaster, and it cost $52 million to make. Luckily, Donald Trump's tariffs weren't around back then, you know, on steel, because it would have cost a whole lot more. Like, I think it's what, 25% more, 30% more? There was actually an accident on this ride back in 2003 when an axle came loose on one of the trains that caused a passenger to have serious back injuries. Also, a 28-year-old man who was swimming in the park, I guess he was down below, he also got injured because something flew off the track. We have the world's most inversions on a roller coaster at number 8. I wouldn't say the name fits with this one, but we're talking about the Smiler. It has 14 inversions and it opened up 2013 in the UK in Alton Towers. I think there has been more tears and screams on this ride than there's been smiles. This ride actually has a pretty bad history behind it. During the opening press preview of this ride, there was a malfunction that delayed the official opening date by 2 months. 2013, 48 people were evacuated from the ride after a piece of debris fell from a section on the track. Another time, 4 people were injured when they were struck by guide wheels. 2015, a train carrying 16 riders and traveling 20 miles an hour collided with an empty stationary train. Everyone needed medical treatment and 5 were seriously injured. In fact, 2 people required partial leg amputations in the weeks following the accident.
At what point was it discussed that you might lose it?
Well, I was laid in the bed and there was multiple people around me. There was a lot of surgeons, so obviously they had to get plastics involved and everything like that.
What an absolute nightmare this girl had to go through. She was rewarded 5 million British pounds, but it just doesn't seem worth it. Moving into number 7 on this list, we have the Formula Rossa roller coaster, which is known to be the fastest roller coaster in the world.
Oh crap!
This ride goes 240 kilometers an hour and it gets to that speed in just 4.9 seconds. So even the acceleration is intense. The ride is located at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. This ride gives you 4.8 G's of force, which makes it feel like your stomach is falling right out of your body. That's more G-force than a shuttle launch or a fighter jet. You go so fast on this ride and you can actually see people's skins just waving in the wind, and you need to wear eye protection for this ride. From the world's fastest ride, now to the world's steepest roller coaster at number 6. We have the Takebisha ride located in Yamanashi, Japan. And it's famous for its 121-degree angle drop, making it the steepest in the world. This ride cost 3 billion yens, which is about $30 million in USD. It's made out of steel because it needs the strength to be able to support such a drop. This ride has many records in the Guinness World Record books. This ride does have 7 inversions. You accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 2 seconds. This is as fast as the world's fastest car. It's faster than a Porsche 918 Spider, any Tesla cars, Ferraris, Lambos, Bugattis. This roller coaster is fast. Number 5 is a ride that I've been on multiple times, and in fact, I was able to work on this ride. This ride I'm talking about is the Behemoth roller coaster located at Canada's Wonderland. So many people freak out on this ride because of how small the restraints are. So many people would sit there and then I would perform, safety checks on them, and they always question like, is that it? Is there anything else going on? You guys are looking at the picture right now. There's no restraints that go over your shoulder. The extra protection that we need. So many people actually got up. So we had to actually pull up all the restraints on everyone, get those people off the ride, load up 2 more if we want to load up 2 more, and then get it going again. So there's a lot of delays on this ride because of that reason, but it's a pretty crazy and intense ride. Behemoth was the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Canada until 2012, another ride beat it. And we're actually gonna get to that ride right now. So at number 4, we have the Leviathan. This ride opened up just a few years after I worked at Canada's Wonderland. I was there for 2 seasons working there, ride operating, and I've been back to Wonderland once, maybe twice more. I wanted to go ride this ride, the Leviathan. I was there the year it opened up. Very long lineup, but it was pretty worth it. But you know what? Once I went to Disney World to Disneyland, I don't care for the long lineups anymore. At Canada's Wonderland, it's just, the lines are ridiculous. It's out in the sun, and now rides just make me dizzy. I guess I'm getting older, guys. The Leviathan is one of the longest rides in the world. It's 5,486 feet long and 306 feet tall. It's the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Canada. Is this real life right now? My ears are bleeding, and did that kind of sound like a kettle, like when the kettle is ready? I'd play the clip again, but I don't want you guys to unsubscribe. Moving into number 3, we have the King Ka. To be honest with you guys, I've never heard of this ride. But while I was doing the research for this, so many people were calling this the scariest ride of all time. And the reason why it's not at number 1 is because, well, there's a new ride being built that looks even more terrifying than this one, but we'll get to that shortly. King Ka is currently known as the tallest roller coaster in the world, and it's the 2nd fastest. This ride is located at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. Usually roller coasters start off going slow, you know, it goes like choo-choo-choo-choo-choo until you get up to the very top, and then you start dropping, and then that's when you start speeding up. Well, for King Ka, you just blast right away, and you don't know when it's gonna happen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys, when you guys go up there, there's also a twist in the track. So just quickly, because it's not a roller coaster, but at number 2, we have a very tall drop tower. In the middle of this ride, King Ka, when I was doing the research for it, there's another ride. This is like Inception, a ride within a ride. The ride is called Zumanjaro, aka the Drop of Doom, which is the world's tallest drop tower. Alright, so that guy passed out, but you didn't really get to see how tall this ride was. So here is the ride starting out. And now let's fast forward it a bit to where we get to the drop. So this is the view you guys are looking at the top of this ride. It seems pretty close to skydiving heights. Finally, at number 1, we have the Polar Coaster. This roller coaster is still under construction. We'll take a look. I don't even know how to explain that thing. It's been under construction since 2012. Very long time, and I guess they're having problems with it. When completed, it will be the world's longest roller coaster, the world's tallest roller coaster, and it's gonna have probably the biggest drops. This looks absolutely insane, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. Starting us off, in at number 10, we have Melissa Collins, the woman in the intro of this video, and a mother of 2 young children. She was on her last day of vacation when she suffered major injuries when a roller coaster crashed. Melissa was on the Sand Blaster roller coaster in Daytona Beach with a friend. Moments leading up to the accident, Melissa thought she was going to die. She was left trapped, dangling 3 stories above the ground, hanging on for dear life. 2 passengers were actually ejected from the ride.
Melissa is still in excruciating pain with a fractured jaw, broken arm, collarbone, crushed ribs, and spinal injuries.
Is this real life right now? This just put a whole new fear in roller coasters for me. And get this just happened last year, and it could have happened to anybody. And at number 9, we have a roller coaster that was stuck upside down for hours with passengers in it. I would for sure pass out with all the blood flowing to my head. The flying dinosaur ride at Universal Studios in Japan wasn't flying anymore.
More than 60 thrill seekers had to be rescued from the ride, which left them hanging for hours.
Everyone was just hanging there for more than 2 hours, and they were about 60 to 90 feet from the ground, so if all of a sudden the restraints open up, well, that would be very bad news. Luckily, no one was injured, and I'm sure that's the last time that any of those people went on rides. There is no way that I'd be able to relive that situation. And if they offered like a season's pass, I would say heck no. Moving into number 8, we have a very scary water ride that derailed. You guys won't believe this. So first you can see everything is fine. The big drop was successful. But after the drop, someone kept filming. Well, that's because the ride derailed at the bottom. Is this real life right now? Here is the scary part of this video. Everyone on board was able to get out of the ride, but the thing is, the ride is still very active. The next group of people were about to come down that big drop and hit right into them. So when the people took notice of this, they realized the situation they were in, they tried to run out of the way. This is incredibly frightening to watch, and now, because everyone in the back boat is stuck, they're going to be the next set of riders who's going to be hit by the next ride, and this is going to continue until the ride operator realizes what is going on. From there, we move on to number 7 on our list. We have the 1986 accident that happened on the Mindbender roller coaster ride inside the West Edmonton Mall in Edmonton. It is located in Alberta, Canada, and yes, I did say inside of a mall. This is a massive mall. I mean, it's so big it has its own roller coasters in it. This 1986 accident is the one and only on this list that happened indoors. Well, on this day, this ride went so fast around the corner, it actually derailed as it approached its third loop on the ride. The ride stalled at the top of the loop and it went backwards into the concrete column. 3 people actually passed away from this scary accident and 15 others were injured. So get this, investigators determined that missing bolt in a wheel assembly caused the accident, so this was actually human error. This ride was closed down for several months and then reopened. After hearing a story like this, I wouldn't reopen this ride, but luckily since that accident, nothing else has ever happened. Moving into number 6, we have the Coney Island cyclone disaster that happened in Brooklyn. Back in 1985, a 29-year-old man was killed, but it had nothing to do with the actual ride malfunctioning. Well, maybe. This man for some reason was able to stand up while the ride was going on, and he hit his head on the crossbeam. I'm not sure why the restraints didn't stop this man from standing while the ride was in progress, or why he wanted to stand. A few years later in 1988, a 26-year-old man was killed after falling out of the ride. Again, what is up with the restraints on this ride? That man fell 30 feet and landed on a crossbeam, and he died on impact. There has been no accidents on this ride for about 20 years, but in 2007, a 53-year-old man suffered several crushed vertebrae in his neck while riding the cyclone ride, and then he passed away 4 days later due to complications during surgery. Number 5, well, here's a messed up one for you. For this next scary accident, let me take you over to the Ride of Steel in Darien Lake, which is located in the States. Well, there was this war vet, James Hackamere, who lost both of his legs during his active duty with the war. When he returned, his family decided to go to the amusement park, but that decision would change his family's life forever. When James was getting on board the Ride of Steel, the staff members there okayed him to ride the ride in his condition, but that ended up being a big mistake. He came loose and fell out of the ride when there was bumps in the ride, and because he didn't have legs, he flew right out and fell right to his death. This is just a tragic story, and I wonder who is at blame for this one. Moving into number 4, we have the Thunder River Rapids accident that happened back in 2016. During this ride, the raft actually flipped over, killing 4 people in the process. This happened at the Dream World amusement park on Australia's Gold Coast. Park management permanently closed down this ride due to the accident. This is a very scary recreation of what happened. The ride has been open since 1986 and was closed more recently in 2016 after the deaths. Police did investigate this case, but no criminal charges were laid against any person in relations to the deaths. Moving into number 3, let's talk about the Disneyland accident. The ride we're talking about is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Okay, That looks pretty familiar. I've actually been on this ride many times, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well. Well, back in 1998, a 5-year-old boy was seriously injured when his foot became wedged between the passengers' cars. The ride was stopped and he was rescued, but all of his toes on his left foot needed to be amputated. Also 2003, on the same ride, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, a 22-year-old man passed away after suffering severe blunt force trauma and extensive internal bleeding after the ride derailed. 10 other riders were also injured. Next up, we have Alton Towers accident on the Smiler ride at number 2. This right here is Vicky Belch and Leah Washington. They both didn't know each other, but they were both involved with the roller coaster accident at Alton Towers that took place in 2015 when they were about 20 and 23 years old at the time. Both of them lost a leg in the crash. They have suffered life-changing injuries and now have to use bionic legs for their everyday lives. This is the aftermath of the crash. There were 16 people injured in total. Alton Towers has been sued and millions of dollars was rewarded to Leah Washington and Vicky due to the negligence. And at number 1, we actually have an accident that just happened a few days ago. Well, at the time of this recording, this is a pre-recorded video. 2 people were found dead after a roller coaster was derailed at a Mexico City amusement park. 6 other riders were treated for shock after the accident on the Quimera roller coaster ride. The last train on the ride detached itself and fell more than 30 feet, hitting a steel support beam on its way down. There was a lot of spectators and some people saw 2 people hitting their heads on their way down, and they hit their heads on metal beams. The 2 men were just 18 and 21 years old. The theme park did come out with the statement. They said, and I quote, "Deeply regrets the terrible accident that happened today in its facilities." They also said total complete support to our affected guests, and they are working with the local authorities on the investigation.